The Titans have drafted defensive tackle T'Vondre Sweat from the University of Texas with the 38th pick. What does he bring to the Titans defense? We're going to break it all down right now with our instant reaction. This is the Music City Audible. Let's get to it. Oh, welcome everyone to another exciting special emergency draft episode of the Music City Audible podcast presented by Broadway Sports Media in partnership with 440 Sports. I'm Justin Graver. With me, as always, Justin Melo. Round 2 of the draft rolls on, but we had to get on here and record this instant reaction to the Titans picking T'Vondre Sweat. Before we talk about this pick, Justin, really quick, this episode is brought to you by Sinkers Beverages in East Nashville and Bluegrass Beverages in Hendersonville. Check out the link in this podcast description or head over to the Sinkers Beverages website to join the In-Crowd. In-Crowd members get access to allocated wines and spirits, exclusive events, early access to barrel releases, and more. So check out Sinkers Beverages and Bluegrass Beverages. Justin, the Titans picked T'Vondre Sweat. There was a ton of smoke about the Titans loving Sweat, despite the earlier DUI incident, which we'll talk about in a second. Teron Davenport, though, huge credit to Teron Davenport, who said the Titans love J.C. Latham a few weeks ago on Jarrett Stillman's radio show, and then said, watch out for T'Vondre Sweat at pick 38 for Titans fans. He was spot on. The Titans get their big defensive tackle.
They do. Yeah, there was a lot of smoke with this one. I've got some positives and some negatives. I'll be honest. I don't love it. I think I had alluded that I wouldn't love it on last episode. The positives are, we'll start there. This is a position I've been talking about for a while, right? Ever since they lost T.R. Tart and didn't get effort from him, there was a hole up the middle of that defense. We expressed concern about it throughout the offseason. I don't think they addressed it in free agency. I didn't love the Sebastian Joseph Day signing, nor do I think he's a true nose, right? I don't think he's that type of player that can stop the run. And I've been worried about their ability to stop the run. But, you pair what they had at that position with what they have at linebacker, and really a concern up the middle of the defense. This will address that at 365 pounds. He's a gap eater, takes on double teams. He's a space eater. He says he moves very well for his size. Man, anyone that can play football at that size, I think, moves well for their size when you're 365. So those are some of the positives that he's going to bring. He'll enjoy playing next to Jeffrey Simmons. Jeffrey Simmons will enjoy playing next to him. He'll do a lot of that dirty work, taking up space, taking on blocks. It's good for a guy like Kenneth Murray, who I said earlier in the offseason has to play with a guy that can stop the run in front of him, or a guy that can take on blocks and prevent those linemen from climbing to the second level and reaching a guy like Kenneth Murray, who's not great at getting off blocks and things of that nature. So he will do some good things for this defense, but I've got some questions about the value. I've got some questions about a trade down. I've got some questions about pass rushing upside, especially with the top 40 pick. So, we'll get into that now.
The Texas Longhorns run defense allowed just 80.8 yards per game, third in all of college football, third best in all of college football. And T'Vondre Sweat was the best player on one of the best defenses in college football last year. I know this. I watched every snap T'Vondre Sweat took for Texas. If you don't know, obviously, I went to the University of Texas. I'm a huge Texas Longhorns fan. So I am super pumped about this pick. And when the draft cycle started, there was a lot of buzz that Byron Murphy was like the better NFL projection of the two big Texas defensive tackles. And I kind of see that. I can kind of see why Byron Murphy has a little more pass rushing upside. But in terms of impact at the collegiate level, T'Vondre Sweat was the best player on that Texas defense. It was not Byron Murphy. Byron Murphy, I think, benefited from playing next to T'Vondre Sweat. And you said it, Kenneth Murray and Jeffrey Simmons are the two biggest beneficiaries of this draft pick because T'Vondre Sweat is a huge mammoth of a man, 6'4", 366 pounds. I mean, between T'Vondre Sweat and J.C. Latham, the Titans are beefing up the trenches. And you can talk about whether or not he's a 2-down player or a 3-down player. Let's get to that in a second. I want to talk about just his impact in the run game because he is a powerful player, extremely strong, agile for a guy who is so big. As big as he is more agile than you'd expect. And he's a guy who just will absolutely eat up double teams in the middle of that defense. He's your very traditional nose tackle type of player who the Titans haven't had a guy like that in a long time. I mean, even some of the good defensive tackles they've had next to Jeffrey Simmons, most recently think T.R. Tart, who obviously had the weird off-field concerns with, I don't know whether it was ego or what the deal with Taylor Tart was, but even he wasn't this nose tackle type who's just going to absolutely eat up double teams. Like, you cannot move T'Vondre Sweat off the line of scrimmage with one guy. It takes two guys to move him off the line of scrimmage. And like you said, that's just going to free up the lanes for Kenneth Murray to come downhill and make plays in the backfield. Sweat makes plays in the backfield. And I just think the Titans' run defense, they're going to be able to stop the run well without having to go to base for, like, from their nickel formation, from their dime package, from their pass defense looks with a guy like Sweat in the middle of your defense. It's like having an extra body on the field at the line of scrimmage. It's huge for what the Titans' run defense can be this season and for the next however many seasons T'Vondre Sweat's on the team.
Well, so you can get guys like that later, right? I'm just going to Taylor Tart was a UDFA, right? I've got questions. I'm going to be honest with you. 5 sacks in 5 years. Do you think he's ever going to be a fantastic pass rusher? No, nobody is at 300.
I disagree. Wait, let me just stop you right there because I disagree. And I think that his impact on the pass rush cannot be measured purely in sacks. And what I mean by that,
he's going to help the teammates.
And if you look at his pass rush win rate over the last 2 seasons combined, 11.6%, not an elite number, but a very good number. I think it's the 6th highest number of all the defensive tackles in this draft class. The only guys higher than him are Byron Murphy, who was at 17% pass rush win rate, highest in the class. Huge win rate there. Johnny Newton, who went a few picks before. Michael Hall Jr. out of Ohio State, still on the board as we record this podcast. Leonard Taylor III, who I'm not even familiar with, and Christian Boyd at Miami, and Christian Boyd out of Northern Iowa, 12.2%. The Brandon Dorless was tied with T'Vondre Sweat at 11.6, but no other defensive tackle, interior defensive lineman, was higher as a pass rush win rate. So yeah, he didn't have the huge sack production, but he was beating his man on a consistent basis, forcing the quarterback off his spot. And to do that from the interior is almost more impactful than to do that from the edge, because he's a guy that's going to push the pocket. And when you have a player like Harold Landry rushing the passer on the outside, who is a speed guy, but sometimes that speed can get him pushed and forced up the arc and around the backside of the quarterback. Well, when you have T'Vondre Sweat caving in the middle of that pocket and forcing the quarterback to back up, that's going to lead him right into Harold Landry's pass rush. So I think he's a great fit with what the Titans already have on the defensive line. And Arden Key's kind of a similar guy in terms of winning with speed on the outside versus winning with power. So you got 2 speed rushers on the outside. You got Jeffrey Simmons, who requires double teams on pass rushing downs. And now T'Vondre Sweat, who you cannot move off the line of scrimmage with one body, who's going to need to be double teamed if you want to get any push on him. That is going to be a killer foursome combination rushing the passer. And I know that the sack production isn't as high as you'd like. You've said it's 5 sacks in the last 2 years, but
no, 5 sacks in 5 years. That's what he had the whole
in
time
his career. Well, he didn't really get on the field much until the last 2 years.
Right. 2 sacks this past year when he got on the field a bunch.
Yeah. But the pass rush win rate is high, and the impact is measured. He's a high-pressure guy, didn't always finish those into sacks, but forces the quarterback, like I said, into other guys where his teammates can clean up the play. So I think his impact has to be measured in more than just the pure sack numbers, and that's why I say he can be a pass-rushing weapon that is on the field for all 3 downs, as long as the biggest concern with him staying on the field all 3 downs is conditioning more than it is impact as a pass rusher.
It's another question I would have for sure. I mean, you saw a guy like Jordan Davis hasn't been able to stay on the field for all 3 downs in Philadelphia, and I think you might end up seeing a similar thing here. Again, the value, the off-field situation, the Titans, obviously, they're talking about it right now. They vetted it. They were comfortable. He was their first visit after that situation. They flew to his hometown to go visit with him and his family after that situation. They vetted it. They were comfortable. I mean, I don't have a whole lot to say. Obviously, a very, very stupid thing that he did.
Let me give a little bit of clarity to that situation just quickly here. And I'm not trying to excuse it. It's obviously a stupid thing to do. If you've had any drinks at all in your system, call an Uber. Like, the resources these guys have to be able to get Ubers is more than the normal average person. So it's absolutely inexcusable. But the only reason that he got a DUI, that anything bad happened that night, is because he was driving home from, I guess, a party or who knows what. And he was driving alongside a former teammate of his, who was a Texas Longhorns linebacker. And this other linebacker was a little bit worse for wear than Sweat and rear-ended T'Vondre Sweat. He crashed into his own teammate. That linebacker has since been kicked off the Texas team. And if he doesn't rear-end Sweat, this, I mean, not that it's okay that he drove home drunk. Obviously, it's not. I'm not trying to say it is. But if he doesn't get rear-ended by his teammate, he makes it home safely at 4 a.m. and no one ever
Hopefully,
is the
yeah,
wiser
yeah.
that this happened. Like, yeah, hope.
Hopefully.
I mean, I'm speculating a little bit, but
Yeah, we
the
don't know
point is,
that.
it's not like he was driving 150 miles per hour down the highway at, because he was drunk or any, like, obviously I'm not trying to excuse it, but I do think there's a little more context to the situation than just a simple DUI.
I'm going to end this by saying, but I think with that situation, I think the 3-down questions, the sack production, I wonder if you could have traded back and gotten him somewhere else. Like, this team came into this pick with so many holes. They still have them at, potentially receiver, linebacker, edge, however you feel, defensive backfield. They won't pick again till 106. Like, this was a prime spot to trade back out of. And I think the player they ended up taking, I feel like they probably could have gotten him with a trade back scenario. Now, in the interest of fairness, there was a run on defensive tackles early. We saw Ruka Roro and Johnny Newton go right before him, essentially, and then Braden Fisk went right after him. So that's 4 D tackles in very short succession. So maybe they wouldn't have got him. They know more about that than I do, and I guess they felt like they couldn't, or they didn't get an offer, whatever. But for me to summarize the sack production, I don't know that he's going to play all 3 downs because of how good he really is rushing the passer, the conditioning, with the off-field stuff, the value. I feel like they probably could have done a little bit better here. And I acknowledge every good thing that he'll do. I get what you're saying in terms of he's going to help the teammates. I believe in a guy that can eat up blocks and free up his teammates for one-on-ones. He's going to help the Jeffrey Simmons. He's going to help the edge guys, and he's going to help the linebackers. He's going to help all 3 of them. I get that. And I reiterated all offseason that this was a position of need because it's the TR Tart thing. They don't have good linebackers. They don't got a good run-stopping guy next to Simmons. So this definitely will fill a hole for them. I just question if they could have done it in a more efficient way.
Well, they must have loved the player because we've seen how many trades did we see in the first 10 picks of the second round? It felt like 7 or 8 trades in the first 10 picks. So I'm sure they were getting calls from all these teams who traded up around them.
Sorry, they just tweeted right now. They said they got 8 or 9 offers for 38 overall. 8 or 9.
So they must have really loved
Sweat anyway.
Yeah, so they must have really loved Tavondre Sweat and must have really felt like they weren't going to get him, even sliding back a handful of spots there. So that tells you, I mean, that should at least give you confidence in their process and their decision-making that they really loved this guy. We can argue the merits of loving one guy in the draft when it's full of guys who are going to bust, but that's another conversation. And the last thing I'll say about the value of this position in the second round is, yes, you mentioned earlier, you can get those space eaters later in the draft, UDFAs, whatever, but the more lately in the NFL over the last 2 years or so, the defensive tackle market has absolutely exploded. And I know your counter argument is those are defensive tackles that really get after the quarterback. And we'll see if Tavondre Sweat can get after the quarterback at the NFL level at a higher rate, at least of production than he did in college. But if he can, you got to get these guys early. You got to get them in the second round or the first round if you want to get a truly impactful player and not just a 2-down player. The guys you're talking about are 2-down guys that go later, that go UDFA. So in order to pay off the pick, I agree he's got to prove he can rush the passer. I believe he can. You're not as sold on that fact. That's all TBD. We'll see what happens. But as far as process goes, I like the way they're doing it and beefing up the trenches, which they didn't put a ton of emphasis on in the free agency process. Obviously, they signed Lloyd Cushenberry and they signed Sebastian Joseph Day a little later on in the process. But they're putting emphasis on it in the draft. Their first 2 picks are specimens that there are not many guys walking the earth.
Big guys
that look like J.C. Latham or that look like Tavondre Sweat. So we're definitely sensing a theme here with this 2024 draft class.
I think someone said 720 pounds combined. That sounds accurate. So that's got to be like all-timers. So I wonder, the most weight combined ever for the first 2 picks. So what is the new regime like? They like big guys, certainly.
Yeah, no question. Get off the bus kind of guys. All right, that'll do it for this recap. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. Make sure you are subscribed to the Music City Audible channel. Give this video a thumbs up and turn on alerts so you get a notification every time we drop a new video. Thanks to our sponsors, Sinkers Beverages in East Nashville and Bluegrass Beverages in Hendersonville. Like I said at the top, head to the Sinkers Beverages website or check the link in this podcast description to join the In-Crowd. In-Crowd members get access to allocated wines and spirits, exclusive events, early access to barrel release releases, and more. And if you're watching this on YouTube, drop a comment below. What do you think of this pick? Do you love it? Do you hate it? I know there's people on Twitter, Titans media people who cover the Titans at a high level, like Tic Tac Titans, posting that this is an absolute disaster pick. And then you got Zach Lyons at F Words Pod posting instant reaction videos saying anyone who thinks T'Vondre Sweat is not a 3-down player doesn't know what they're talking about. So that's shots fired directly at you, Justin Melo. And again, and at Tic Tac Titans and other guys. So
not a lot of 3-downers at that size in the NFL. So we'll see.
Yeah. We'll see. All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll be back the next time the Titans make a pick. We might wait until the end of Saturday if they don't make another pick on Friday, which we're not expecting. They'd have to package a bunch of stuff together to come up into the second or third round. So expecting this to be the last pick the Titans make before Saturday, and we'll be back to recap the entire draft class when that is complete. So until then, y'all stay safe out there and tighten up.
A Broadway sports media production.